In 2015, a Japanese satellite pointed its radar at the Sahara and saw something that should not exist. Beneath 9 million square kilometers of sand, the instruments detected the outline of a river system larger than anything flowing in Africa today. A river that, if it still existed, would rank among the 12 largest on Earth. But the river was just the beginning. Once scientists started looking beneath the Sahara with modern technology, they found a freshwater lake larger than all 5 Great Lakes combined. Graveyards where mothers were buried reaching for their children. 15,000 paintings of swimmers and hippos on rock walls in a place where it has not rained in living memory. And scattered across hundreds of kilometers, fragments of glass so pure they ended up in a pharaoh's tomb. Glass that could only be made by something hitting the earth at the speed of a bullet. The Sahara is not what you think it is. It is the world's largest crime scene, and the evidence has been buried under 20 meters of sand. The discovery that rewrote geography happened almost by accident. Charlotte Skonieczny and her team were analyzing pulsar satellite data when the radar did what radar does. It penetrated the sand. What came back was the unmistakable signature of an ancient riverbed called the Tamanrasset. This was not some modest stream. The channel ran over 500 kilometers from the Atlas and Hagar Mountains all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, draining into the sea through what is now the Cap Tamiris Canyon off Mauritania. At its peak, its drainage basin was comparable in scale to the Ganges. If you could somehow restore the water that once flowed through it, you would be looking at one of the great rivers of the world. And the Tamanrasset was not alone. Earlier NASA shuttle missions had revealed buried tributary channels beneath Sudan that finally explained a puzzle cartographers wondered about for centuries. The mysterious Great Bend of the Nile, that sharp turn the river makes, was carved by ancient drainage patterns now invisible from the surface. Libya's Kufra Paleoravir system shows yet another massive buried channel. The fossil aquifer these dead rivers fed is so vast that Libya's great man-made river project taps it today to supply 70% of the country's water. Ancient rain, still sitting underground, still keeping people alive. Mainstream geology dates the last major flow period to roughly 5,000 to 6,500 years ago, during the African humid period. The rivers were fed by a strengthened West African monsoon driven by Earth's axial precession, a roughly 21,000-year wobble that shifts how much solar radiation hits different latitudes. What is now the emptiest landscape on the planet was, in recent geological terms, a green, well-watered land with flowing rivers. If these river systems supported such vast drainage networks, what settlements might still lie buried along their banks, invisible to everything except ground-penetrating radar? But the rivers were just tributaries. They all fed into something much larger, a body of water so massive that when it vanished, it left behind the single largest source of dust on the entire planet. When people think of the Sahara's past, they might picture a few oases or scattered ponds. The idea that a lake once sat in the middle of the desert sounds like a minor geological footnote. It was not. Mega Chad, as researchers call it, covered 360,000 square kilometers at its peak, roughly 6,000 years ago. That is an area larger than all 5 North American Great Lakes combined. It reached depths of 160 meters. It held hippos, crocodiles, Nile perch, and African manatees. This was, in all likelihood, the largest freshwater lake Earth has ever seen. In 2015, Simon Armitage and colleagues at Royal Holloway published a study reconstructing its decline. Their finding was disturbing. The lake did not slowly evaporate over millennia. It collapsed in just a few hundred years. The West African monsoon weakened abruptly around 5,000 years ago, and the largest lake on the planet shrank to what is now Lake Chad, roughly 1,000th of its former size. The dried lake bed left behind is called the Bodele Depression. Today, it is the single greatest source of atmospheric dust on Earth. Trade winds carry that dust across the Atlantic Ocean, where it fertilizes the Amazon rainforest. The death of an African lake is literally keeping a South American jungle alive. Mainstream science attributes the primary cause to orbital forcing. Earth's axial precession reduced summer solar radiation over North Africa, weakening the monsoon. But the Armitage study showed the transition was faster than gradual orbital change alone would predict. Vegetation loss reducing moisture recycling. Dust increasing surface reflectivity. The Sahara's death was likely both natural and accelerated. A climate trigger that, once pulled, cascaded faster than anyone expected. Could the same orbital feedback mechanism that killed the Sahara happen in reverse? Is the Sahara already showing early signs of regreening? We do not need satellites or climate models to know the Sahara was alive. The people who lived there left proof, painted directly onto rock, in a gallery stretching across an area larger than the entire country of Ireland. The Tassili Ajjer Plateau in southeastern Algeria is one of the driest, most inhospitable landscapes in Africa. Temperatures regularly exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Nothing grows, nothing lives. The last thing anyone expects to find in a place like this is art. In 1933, a French legionnaire named Brennans stumbled upon something impossible. Spread across 72,000 square kilometers of sandstone are more than 15,000 individual paintings and engravings. They span roughly 10,000 years and record, in real time, the death of a world. The oldest images, dated to around 10,000 BC, show elephants, giraffes, rhinoceroses, and hippos. Figures of humans swim through water in what is now bone-dry rock. By the pastoral period, roughly 5500 to 2000 BC, the paintings shift to cattle herders tending enormous herds. One engraving, known as the Crying Cows, shows cattle with tears streaming from their eyes, one of the most haunting images in prehistoric art. Explorer Henri Lotte led expeditions to document the site in the 1950s and 60s. He called Tassili the greatest museum of prehistoric art in the world. UNESCO granted it World Heritage status in 1982. Then the paintings shift again. The cattle disappear. Horses and chariots appear around 1000 BC, suggesting long-distance travel across increasingly barren land. Finally, camels. The unmistakable sign that water is gone and desert has won. These paintings are a 10,000-year climate diary written by the people who watched their world dry up and blow away. No other site on Earth documents environmental collapse at this scale and from this perspective. Many deeper shelters remain unexcavated, and vandalism is actively threatening the art. How much of this record will be lost before it is fully documented? The paintings prove people lived here. But paintings are anonymous. To meet the actual people of the Green Sahara, to see their faces, hold their tools, and understand how they buried their dead, you have to go to a place in Niger where a dinosaur hunter found something that stopped him in his tracks. The Teneri Desert in Niger is called the desert within a desert. One of the emptiest regions of the Sahara. The last thing anyone would expect to find here is a cemetery spanning 5,000 years. In the year 2000, paleontologist Paul Sereno was leading an expedition hunting dinosaur bones when one of his team members stumbled across human bones protruding from an eroded dune. What Sereno's team eventually excavated was Gobero, the oldest and largest cemetery ever found in the Sahara. More than 182 burials spanning from roughly 7700 BC to 2200 BC. The burials tell the story of two completely different peoples who occupied the same lakeside settlement thousands of years apart. The Kiphians, roughly 7600 to 5360 BC, were tall, powerfully built hunter-fishers, some reaching over 6 feet. They made wavy-line pottery and bone harpoons. They lived beside a lake 3 meters deep that held Nile perch, a fish that can grow to 2 meters long. Then, around 5300 BC, the climate shifted. The Kiphians vanished. A gap of several centuries appears in the burial record. When people returned, they were different. The Tenerians, roughly 5200 to 2200 BC, were shorter, lighter-boned, and herded cattle rather than hunting big game. Their lake was shallower, holding smaller catfish and tilapia. They made different pottery and buried their dead differently. The most haunting find was a triple burial. A woman and 2 children laid on a bed of flowers, their arms still reaching toward each other. 80 radiocarbon dates across the site confirm the chronology. The Kiphians' disappearance aligns precisely with a documented arid interval when the lake dried. There is no mystery about what killed them. The water left. The real revelation is what Gobero proves. This was not a wasteland with scattered nomads. This was a homeland, occupied continuously for 5 millennia, where people fished, herded, raised children, decorated their bodies with ivory bracelets, and buried their dead with care and tenderness. Gobero was found by accident because wind erosion exposed the bones. How many other cemeteries remain buried beneath dunes that have never eroded in the right place at the right time? Gobero shows us the people. The paintings show us the world they lived in. But scattered across hundreds of kilometers southeast of there, something lies on the surface of the sand that no living thing could have made, and it ended up in the tomb of a pharaoh. In the Great Sand Sea along the border of Libya and Egypt, scattered across hundreds of square kilometers, fragments of glass lie on the surface of the sand. Not ordinary glass. 98% pure silica, more transparent than most modern industrial glass. Creating glass this pure requires temperatures exceeding 1600 degrees Celsius. Far hotter than any volcanic eruption. Far hotter than any fire humans could produce. The glass was first formally documented in the 1930s, but local Bedouin had known about it for centuries. Dating puts it at approximately 29 million years old. For decades, the origin was genuinely debated. Some proposed a meteorite impact. Others argued for an atmospheric airburst, a comet exploding above the desert without hitting the ground, like a nuclear detonation in the sky. The airburst theory was popular because no impact crater has ever been identified near the glass field. In 2024, the debate was effectively settled. Elizaveta Kovaleva and colleagues published a study in American Mineralogist reporting rhyolite within the glass. Rhyolite is a high-pressure form of zircon that only forms under pressures exceeding 130,000 atmospheres, conditions that occur exclusively at meteorite impact sites, not airbursts. This confirmed the glass was created by something physically striking the Earth. The mystery of the missing crater remains. It may be buried under sand, eroded beyond recognition, or simply undiscovered. One more detail elevates this from geology to human history. In 1922, when Howard Carter opened the tomb of Tutankhamun, he found a carved scarab beetle at the center of an ornate pectoral necklace. The scarab was made of Libyan Desert Glass. 3,300 years ago, someone collected this 29-million-year-old impact glass from the deep desert and placed it in the tomb of a pharaoh. That is not alien technology. That is human curiosity. If the impact crater has never been found, where exactly is it? And what else might it reveal? A river bigger than the Nile, the largest lake on Earth. 15,000 paintings, 5,000 years of graves, 29-million-year-old glass in a pharaoh's tomb. The Sahara was not just alive, it was a cradle. And the civilization it cradled may be one you already know. Ancient Egypt appears in textbooks as if it sprang from the Nile Valley fully formed. Mainstream history treats the Nile as the starting point. But what if the starting point was 1,000 kilometers to the west, in the middle of what is now a lifeless desert? 100 kilometers west of Abu Simbel, archaeologist Fred Wendorf discovered Nabta Playa in 1973. What he found was a stone circle of 29 standing stones arranged to mark the summer solstice, the moment when the monsoon rains arrived. In 1998, archaeoastronomer J. McKim Malville published a study in Nature, identifying additional alignments with the stars Arcturus, Sirius, and Alpha Centauri, and possibly Orion's belt. The circle dates to approximately 4800 BC, at least 2,000 years older than Stonehenge, and roughly 1,000 years older than the earliest known Egyptian monuments. Nearby, the team found elaborate cattle burials in clay-lined chambers, including one cow-shaped megalith that some researchers believe may be a precursor to the Egyptian goddess Hathor, traditionally depicted as a cow. Here is the critical connection. By 3400 BC, the Sahara had dried to roughly its modern state. The people who built Nabta Playa, nomadic pastoralists who used the stars to navigate the desert and organize communal construction projects, had nowhere to go but east, toward the last reliable water source. The Nile. Egyptologist Fakhri Hassan proposed in 2002 that Saharan monuments dating to 4700 BC may be direct antecedents to the mastabas that eventually became pyramids. The first dynasty of Egypt, roughly 3100 BC, coincides almost exactly with the final drying of the Sahara. Nabta Playa is not proof of a lost supercivilization. It is proof that the people of the Green Sahara were astronomers, engineers, and organizers of communal labor. Exactly the skills needed to build what came next along the Nile. The Sahara did not simply die, its people and their knowledge migrated. Egypt may be the Sahara's greatest monument, built not by its architects, but by its refugees. We think of the Sahara as the opposite of civilization. the emptiest place where nothing happens. But it may be where civilization started, not despite the desert, but because of it. When the rain stopped and the lakes dried and the rivers vanished, the people of the Sahara did not die. They adapted. They walked east. They carried their knowledge of the stars, their skills for organizing labor, their traditions of monumental building, and planted all of it in the Nile Valley. The Sahara is not a graveyard of a lost world. It is the foundation of the world we know. Every time the wind strips away another layer of sand, another secret surfaces. We have only scratched the surface, literally. Somewhere beneath those dunes there are rivers, cities, and stories we have not even begun to imagine. Which of these discoveries surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments. And if you want to keep exploring the ancient world, hit subscribe. The Sahara is not the only place where the ground is keeping secrets.